And there you see it, a Tomahawk missile launch from the early hours of Operation Odyssey Dawn on Saturday. And now we're hearing the U.S. military may be ramping down its role in Libya. Joining me now are former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and CNN contributor General Wesley Clark and CNN Pentagon correspondent Chris Lawrence. Chris, let's start with you. You just got out of that Pentagon briefing just a short time ago. What stood out to you?
Well, one thing that really jumped out to me, Randy, was a lot of us have been wondering, and there's been a lot of accusations about what the U.S. military role is going to be going forward. There were some accusations that there was a possibility that the U.S. military and its allies could be in a position of simply providing air support to these rebel groups as they battle Gaddafi's forces. In other words, becoming sort of close air support to a group on the ground as they try to battle back and overtake parts of the country. Well, we heard today from General Carter Ham, who's the commander in that region, pushing back on that, saying in all actuality, they have seen some of these opposition groups with heavy armor and armored vehicles and heavy weapons, and that if they were to move into populated areas and to engage the Libyan forces as sort of an offensive, the general said that could become a real challenge to us, and he said at that point they would no longer be covered by the protection of the no-fly zone. He also talked about the fact that the U.S. military and its allies, Britain, France, and the other countries, although there has been at least one strike on Colonel Gaddafi's compound, and we've now confirmed that a second strike was called off last night, he said that Colonel Gaddafi is not a target, and he could actually see this mission ending with Gaddafi still in office.
Yeah, and that certainly has a lot of people shaking their heads. All right, General Clark, let's get to you. What is the next step? After hearing this Pentagon briefing, what is the next step for the United States?
Well, I think the next step is really diplomatic. The military has done what it was asked to do. It may or may not have destroyed all of Gaddafi's air defenses. There are some reports from the region that say that he managed to pull some of his air defenses back, and we heard early on that Admiral Gortney say that some of the mobile assets are not worth worrying about at this point. But we've substantially completed the military task. It's really up to diplomacy. Now, what we would hope to see is the UN taking a role. They have a UN Secretary General Special Representative appointed. He should be dealing with Gaddafi. The UN Secretary General was in Egypt today. And so this is a time then that the International Criminal Court jurisdiction should take over, an investigation should be conducted, and ideally we'd see preparations made for democratic elections in Libya.
But getting back to what Chris had mentioned, that Gaddafi could remain in power even after all of this. President Obama has said that it's time for him to go, and now you have the attacks on Libya. If he's still in power after all this, will that make the United States look weak?
Well, he won't be in power, I don't think, after an International Criminal Court investigation, because I think he'll be indicted. And if there's democratic elections held, he won't be eligible to stand for those elections. But let's say that doesn't happen. Yes, he'll be a wounded, vengeful animal. We've been through this before with him, and we can expect real problems in terms of his sparking international terrorism, to seek revenge in the Middle East, Europe, and against the United States.
And does this at all feel like Iraq to you in any way, General, in terms of what the expectations are? Do the people in Libya expect the United States and the allies to help rebuild Libya?
Well, I think we're not there yet, and I think, you know, right now the infrastructure in Libya is mostly correct. They have some oil, they're exporting, and they have exported oil. They've got large foreign currency reserves. It's not quite like Iraq in that respect, but it might be like Iraq in the sense that if this stalemates and Gaddafi remains in charge and he holds on to major population centers, and we're on the fringes of this using air power, it might mean a prolonged stalemate. I think that would be very unfortunate for the international community and obviously for the people of Libya, and that's why it's time for the United Nations to take charge and finish the job here with diplomacy.
All right, our thanks to both of you, General Wesley Clark and Chris Lawrence.